The concept of summer vacation seems lost, to say the least, among Korean high school students.
If you grew up according to Western practices, you might have thought the thing you were taught were the norm across the world. Well, you are in for a shock. We found 20 regulations in force in schools across Korea that will leave your mouth open. 1. Students are cleaners. Koreans take cleanliness seriously. It is an important part of their culture, and they are able to maintain a clean environment by ensuring that the practice of cleaning up after yourself is passed down from generation to generation across the country. Every member of society learns to take responsibility for cleaning their environment, to the extent that it is no longer a chore or a task, but just a normal activity that people do without thinking much about it. What better way is there to imbibe this century-old tradition in the next generation of Koreans than by using school regulations? As a student in most Western countries, you must be used to seeing the janitors sweep and mop your classrooms. But in Korea, the students are their own janitors. Children even from very young classes are mandated to participate in regular cleaning activities to keep their classrooms tidy. Children pick up dirt and sweep and clean the classroom and other areas in the school environment at different points in the day. These cleaning duties are included in the class's timetable, so there is no chance for a class to forget to clean. In lower classes, they can have cleaning duties directly before break time, so children get to play around once they are done cleaning. However, in the classes for older students, they clean the class at the end of the school day and at the start of a new day. Since this cleaning practice is part of Korean culture, the practice of cleaning up after yourself continues even when the children get to finally go home. Some people say that this rule teaches children patience and promotes a dedication to civic duty within them. 2. White underwear. Growing up, there are some things that you naturally consider private, and one of them is your underwear. In many Korean schools, while they recognize that your underwear is private, the school is still interested in the color. For some reason, they made it compulsory that students should wear plain white underwear when they are in school. So everyone who sees a student from a certain school can already tell the color of the underwear they are wearing. If you think because your underwear is private and hidden, there is no way for the school to actually enforce these rules, then you are absolutely wrong. School officials constantly check students in changing rooms and at different points in the school to ensure that they are keeping to the strict regulations in force. Defaulters are not allowed to get away with a simple pat on the back. Instead, in schools where this rule is applied, there are strict punishments for breaking the white underwear rule. Most schools with uniforms stop their rules on additional uniform accessories at socks. But these Korean schools believe that everyone must wear matching underwear in addition to the school's uniform. Many people have called this rule a violation of the basic human rights of the children in these schools. But for many years, Korean schools have continued to hold on to this practice. However, with mounting pressure on the schools, these invasive rules are being removed from the education system. In recent years, most schools have edited their regulations to remove the mandatory white underwear rule from their rulebooks. 3. Romantic relationships are prohibited. As children reach adolescence, they naturally start to get involved in relationships with the opposite sex. In Korea, the schools recognize this trend, and they feel it is inappropriate for their students. As a result of this, they have a ban on romantic relationships between students. Schools that have this rule usually claim that their reason for this is that relationships are a distraction for students. Dating is considered to be unethical behavior, so it is heavily frowned upon. Since most of these students are adolescents, entering relationships with each other is something that comes naturally to them, so it is common to see some bold students still have relationships in secret. However, if they are caught in compromising positions, they will be severely dealt with because Korean schools consider this to be a serious offense. The punishment for being in a romantic relationship while in school could be some harsh disciplinary punishment, known as jinggi. In some schools, the punishment can be straight tohak, expulsion from schools, usually when the culprits have been caught for a similar offense before. Since children can be incredibly secretive, a lot of secret romantic relationships in Korean schools continue undetected, once the students involved can be discreet. In some cases, in order to catch offenders, the schools motivate students to report their peers for rewards. 4. Corporal punishment. When it comes to punishing children for bad behavior, it is common for schools to use detention and other methods that do not cause any physical or psychological harm to the students. However, in Korean schools for a long time, teachers were known to correct children by beating them, using extremely harsh words and other similar punishments. Thankfully, for some years now, the use of corporal punishment in Korean schools has been outlawed. The state did not limit this ban on corporal punishment to only schools, but they also extended it to the home, so parents are not allowed to beat their children. However, even though the ban on corporal punishment has been established by the South Korean government, there are still many cases of corporal punishment being meted out in schools. In some cases, it could get so bad that the students find a way to call the police to report their teachers for assaulting them. When corporal punishment was first abolished by the South Korean government in 2010, many educators, schools, and other groups opposed the abolition. An earlier move to abolish corporal punishment was first stopped by these groups in 1998, so when the government banned it in 2010, they were not pleased. 5. No outside shoes in school. When you enter a Korean home, you take your shoes off at the door and put on inside shoes, or walk barefoot within the home. Walking into a Korean home with your outside shoes on is considered to be an act of disrespect to the owner of the home. It is a part of the country's culture, and the practice continues when children go to school. When you get to school, you take off your shoes at the door and put on indoor shoes when you enter the school building. In most schools, students bring these shoes to school themselves, but on special occasions, the school can provide special matching footwear for all students. Students who don't have indoor shoes to wear in school will have to walk around wearing their socks or barefoot because wearing outside shoes while in school is prohibited. 6. Compulsory haircuts. In Korean schools, just as you have to come to school wearing the school's uniform, other parts of your body must be kept in line with the school's rules. Students' hair is an important part of their appearance, and Korean schools are interested in ensuring that it is kept a certain way while the student is in school. In many schools, these strict rules on hairstyle have been replaced with more lax rules, but in some conservative schools, the rules still exist. The rule for girls was that their hair must not grow longer than 1.2 inches below their ears. Decades ago, boys used to shave their hair off for school, but that rule transitioned into a regulation that boys' hair should be kept short and smooth. In North Korean schools, the rules on haircuts are even stricter. There are government-prescribed haircuts even for adults, which are 18 cuts for women and 10 cuts for men, with anything outside this being illegal. For students, schools have their strict haircut rules within the limits already provided by the state, and they are strictly enforced. 7. Respect for authorities. Korean children are taught to be respectful at all times because it is an important part of their culture. If you come across Koreans meeting each other, you would see them bowing their heads as a sign of respect for each other. And this respectful practice is instilled in the children both at home and in school. Students bow and greet their teachers before the start of every class and at the end of a school day. This practice was so entrenched in Korean schools that it became an organized routine for the students. Students will be seated in their classrooms before the teacher enters, and when the teacher comes in, a class leader will shout, "Attention, greet," and then the class will chorus a greeting for the teacher immediately after. This routine has, however, been removed from most schools because it could affect the teacher-student relationship. However, bowing as a form of greeting is still an important part of Korean culture. In the North Korean state, these principles are taken up a notch once again. The state places a lot of emphasis on the supreme leader and the Kims that came before him. Students are made to spend many hours every week learning about the supreme leader, his predecessors, and all the incredible things they have accomplished for the Korean state. There are also images of the leader placed in classrooms, and any form of dissident talk is highly frowned upon even among students. There have been reports that comments made against the supreme leader are regarded as blasphemy. 8. No long summer break. For American school children and most students from Western countries, the long summer break has become a yearly custom that must not be missed. It is a period when students get to take a break from schoolwork and spend time with friends and family, travel the world, and do other fun stuff. What will surprise you is that while summer is consistent across many regions of the world, not all children get to enjoy that long summer break. One of the places where this happens is in Korea. Even though the way Korean and Western schools' timetables are structured is similar, they are far from identical. Korean schools do not have one long summer break going on for 2 to 3 months. In Korean schools, the summer break takes place between July and August, so it lasts only for about a month, or sometimes 5 weeks. However, even though Korean students do not have a long summer break, they do not spend all the days in the rest of the year in school. Since their calendar is structured differently, they enjoy these one-month breaks at different points in the year. For instance, their calendar is planned around the Lunar New Year. So when this time comes, students get a break that lasts longer than what students in American schools will get at the same time of the year. 9. Military training. The Korean countries have been involved in multiple armed conflicts, so they are very conscious of the need for an efficient military to fend off invaders where necessary. In a bid to protect the state, both Korean countries have rules that mandate young people to participate in military exercises to ensure they are fit and trained to participate in real combat and defend themselves where necessary. In South Korea, this training is not mandated within their schools. Instead, it is a compulsory military service program that all males are expected to complete once they turn 18. From any time between when the boy turns 18 and when he reaches 28, he will be required to participate in this training. There are some exceptions to this rule, but most Korean boys will have to participate in this training. Ladies can also participate in the training, but it is optional for them and compulsory for men. The North Koreans take the duty of preparing their children for physical combat more seriously. In North Korean schools, just as students are taught math and science, they are also trained to engage in basic combat techniques. 10. Rules on cell phones. Mobile phones have become an essential part of our lives. We use them for everything and simply can't do without them. However, if you are a student in Korea, you have to learn to do without it, because when you are in school, you are not allowed to use your phone. The reason behind the ban on the use of phones during school hours is to prevent distractions. The fact that they can be loaded with games and social media applications can make them distracting. Since the schools are educating adolescents and little children who are highly susceptible to overusing social media and playing games, the Korean schools believe it is bad for the students. In most schools, teachers are allowed to confiscate any phone from a student, especially when they see it being used during school hours. Some schools that have lax rules allow students to hold their phones, but during school hours, they are only allowed to use it to receive emergency calls. Some schools also mandate that teachers should be given remote access to all phones in their classrooms to restrict the students' use of their phones while classes are on. 11. School uniforms. In American schools, students can come to school in clothes they choose with some restrictions on what they can wear. Korean schools decide that children do not need to have to make daily decisions on what to wear and just give them uniforms instead. When you come to school, you have to come in those uniforms or you will not be allowed to enter the school. The idea behind using uniforms is that it creates a sense of equality among children in the school. All students look the same way when they are in school, irrespective of their social class, because they're all wearing the same uniforms. In addition to wearing the school's pattern as a uniform, the schools also have their requirements for socks, shoes, and belts. Some schools even have requirements for the color and pattern of underwear that students wear. 12. Hagwon. Imagine having to go to another school to learn what was already taught in your regular school. This is what happens in North Korea, and if you think the extra schools are for students who are failing in class, you will be absolutely wrong. Research revealed that up to 80% of Korean students were attending these extra schools in preparation for exams. These extra schools are known as hagwons, and they are the Korean equivalent of the Japanese cram schools. In South Korea, passing the sunung, also known as the Korean SAT, is a very big deal for students and their parents. As a result of the pressure to pass, students consider no limit when looking for opportunities to learn. In the sunung, it is common for there to be what are known as killer questions among the questions students are to answer. These killer questions are questions that were not taught in the classroom. Instead of waiting in school, students go to hagwons to learn how to answer these questions properly. Since there are so many students that take the sunung every year, there are always thousands of customers for hagwons to recruit into their schools. Reports stated that there were up to 3 times more hagwons for students in Seoul than there were convenience stores. The authorities have put in different measures to reduce the need for hagwons, even going as far as removing killer questions from the sunung. But these cram schools continue to thrive in Korean societies. 13. Rules for leaving school. Just like it is in other countries, students are not allowed to leave the school premises until school is officially over. However, in North Korean schools, this limit extends to teachers and many other school staff. Instructors and teachers are only allowed to leave if they have a minder with them. The schools are also heavily guarded by the country's military to ensure that the people within are protected and that the rules on when you can leave the school are adhered to. Students who break this rule are severely punished by the school authorities to serve as a deterrent to other students. 14. Bathroom rules. It is absolutely normal for students to get permission from the teacher when they want to go to the bathroom in the middle of the class. In Korean schools, this is common practice, but the shocking part is what happens immediately after. Many Korean schools do not come stocked with toilet paper, so students have to bring their own toilet paper to school. If you do not have your own toilet paper, you have to source for an alternative or use a friend's toilet paper. In schools where they have toilet paper, many of them have a rationing system for how students use the toilet paper. A roll of toilet paper is allocated to each class for a specified period, and the class rations how they use it. When a student wants to use the toilet, they cut a specified ration from the toilet paper and they manage it to handle all their toilet needs for that bathroom trip. There are no clear reasons why this method of managing toilet paper exists in Korean schools, but we know it saves the school the cost of having students use toilet paper recklessly. 15. Saturday school and yaja. For many years, Saturday school was a compulsory activity in Korean schools. Students had to come in on Saturday to read and continue their learning activities in what was a mandatory extra lesson. However, some years back, the government stepped in and made it illegal for schools to make their Saturday lessons compulsory. Aside from Saturday lessons, there is another common practice in Korean schools, known as yaja. Yaja is an abbreviated form of a Korean word that means night self-learning. In the evening, students come into their classes and read till around 10 or 11 p.m. when they are sent back home. Just like Saturday school, yaja used to be compulsory for all students to attend, but the government has outlawed that rule now. 16. Seats are based on height. You can't just sit wherever you want when you are in a class in a South Korean school. Every person has a designated seat, and seats are allocated to students according to their height. The shortest students in the class sit in front, and the tallest students sit at the back. The reasoning behind this is to ensure everyone has a clear view of what the teacher is doing in front of the class, especially in schools where classes can get large. Your allocated seat position is not just about where you sit, but it also determines your number in class. For instance, if you are the shortest student in the class, your seat number will be 1. That seat number is used for attendance, and sometimes teachers use it to call students to participate in class activities. 17. Strictly limited internet access. Schools in Korea keep a tight lid on the information that students can access when they are in school. One of the ways the schools are able to limit students' access to the internet is by placing a ban on the use of mobile phones and other electronic devices during school hours. In some schools where phones and other devices are allowed, they could give the teachers remote access to the students' devices to ensure that they are surfing the web within the limits of the school's rules. It is also common for schools that allow students to use electronic devices and the school's Wi-Fi to have web filtering rules that prevent students from accessing certain sites using the school's Wi-Fi. In North Korea, students and other members of the general public cannot access the global internet. Instead, what they have access to is a heavily censored intranet that blocks off Western propaganda from reaching students and instead feeds them with propaganda from the North Korean government. They do this to protect the developing minds of the young students from being poisoned with opinions that do not favor the North Korean government. 18. Students don't fail. In most education systems, when you fail to meet some requirements after completing a grade, you have to repeat the grade because you failed. In South Korea, this is not the case. You simply can't fail a grade. Your scores can never be too low for you to progress with your mates to the next grade. If you think the fact that you can't fail will make students lazy and keep getting bad grades, you are wrong. In Korea, families place a lot of value on education because of its prestige, and also the fact that getting into the right college can ensure that your child gets a quality job when they graduate. Thus, even though students can't fail a grade, the school, the child, and their parents are greatly invested in the child's success in school. The Korean SAT is the biggest exam in the school, and students that ace it get to attend the best colleges in the country. In Korea, having a degree from one of the top universities is a guarantee for an excellent job. So there's a lot of competition for getting excellent scores in the Korean SAT examination. 19. Discipline. In Korean society, virtues like punctuality, discipline, decency, and punctuality are taken very seriously. Society inculcates this careful behavior into its citizens using school rules. As children, the regulations in schools teach young Koreans to learn and practice these patterns of behavior. Some years back, schools used to use corporal punishment to instill these principles into children. When a child comes late to school, fails to carry out a task, or dresses indecently, the punishment could be multiple strokes of a cane or a wooden ruler. Some schools make students undergo some physically tasking punishment instead of beating them. However, Since corporal punishment has been outlawed in South Korea, schools have had to turn to innovative ways to punish students for bad behavior that does not involve verbally or physically assaulting them. 20. North Korean labor. School children usually spend most of their time learning and then the rest of their time playing or doing some basic chores. But this is only in schools that are not in North Korea. In North Korea, school children are used as free labor to work in some parts of the country's economy. Human Rights Watch investigated and presented its claim to the United Nations Committee on the Rights of a Child on the abuse of children's rights in North Korea. According to information documented by Human Rights Watch, school children in North Korea are mandated to participate in forced labor like farming, scrap metal collecting, rock breaking, and similar strenuous tasks as part of their school curriculum. Since education is compulsory, all children must go through this process as they become adults. While their counterparts in other countries are learning, North Korean students are made to work for free for the government for several hours every week. The 2014 UN Commission of Inquiry has also reported this forced labor going on in North Korea as a human rights abuse, and the practice has been condemned across the world. However, since North Korea is an autocratic state, little has been done to remove or reduce the forced labor tasks on children in the country.